Welcome to episode 2 of Warmaster's Workshop. Today we're going to be learning how to trace out and work with Sintra armor plates for your Mandalorian armor costume. This is Sintra. Um, it's not a very thick material. It's just a thin plastic. In fact, here it's about 3 millimeters thick. I've got some that's 6 millimeters thick also, but this is 3 millimeters thick. It's Sintra is just a brand name. It's basically expanded um, PVC Foamboard. It's a sign board that sign shops use to make signs out of. So it's actually very cheap, very readily available in pretty much most areas around the world. Um, this stuff is if you have a sign shop local. I've got a sign shop that's one of my IT clients, and so I get Sintra, pieces of Sintra for free from them, just scraps. So I encourage you to see if you've got a local sign shop. You might be able to get this Sintra for free, and if you do, then you'll cut down a little bit of your cost, so you can use that money elsewhere with your kit. So what we're going to do starting out is you've seen the list of tools and the list of parts that are required for this, so I'm not really going to go over it in the video here. You've already seen the list. We'll, as they come up, we'll use them, and you can see exactly how they're being used. But the very first thing you've got to do is you've got to get your templates printed out. These are what they call the Wizard of Flight templates. That's just the handle for the internet handle for the guy that created these templates several years ago. We still use them today. He updated them not long ago, but these are actually the Django Fett templates. The reason I know that is because the Django Fett collar plate has got this curved neck area, where the Boba template has got straight lines here. And then if you look at the gut plate has a nice angled corners, whereas the Boba gut plate, they're more rounded. This one's got a much sharper corners on it there. So these are just these are the templates that you need for the torso, or the top part of your armor. Everything from basically the stomach up. You've got, of course, your collar plate, which I don't think it can all fit into this. Maybe just barely. Let's see. It's a pretty good sized piece of there we go, piece of gear. That's pretty close to all of it right there. Anyway, this is the biggest piece out of all these. At least the largest surface area is the collar piece. And this is, I don't know what size these are. There's several different sizes of patterns. You've got, small, medium, and large. And I think there's even an extra large, depending on how tall you are. And those measurements may not necessarily be right either, depending on your body size and things like that. My words as far as the measurements go are, you need to maybe scale a certain size up or down depending on how well the templates fit on you. You can always hop on the Mandalorian Mercs forums at www.mandalorianmercs.org and hop in the armor planning thread, or in the armor thread, or in the armor forum itself, and armor board, and pop some pictures of yourself up in with the templates on, like taped on, and or the members will give you some good advice on whether or not they look to be the appropriate size. We won't worry about sizing and putting how much space is required until we get ready to put these on a vest in a later episode. So I just want to go over the patterns though. So you've seen the collar plate. Of course, it's a pretty good size. And then you've got, of course, these are the chest plates. Oop, get back in focus here. Here we go. You've got your chest plate here. And I only ever cut out one of these to use because this is actually the left plate. And then when you need it to be the right plate, you just flip it over. You only have to worry about, you don't even have to worry about cutting out these little light windows if you're not planning on putting lights behind it. But if you are, you really only need to worry about cutting them out on one plate. For the most part, just worry about cutting them out for one plate, and you should be good to go. It can be right or left, whichever you want. On Boba and Jango's armor, it's on the left, so but it's totally your choice. And this here we have the gut plate. It's a pretty good sized plate. You get back in focus here. There we go. It's a pretty good sized plate. There's not really much to say about it. It's a pain to cut out sometimes because of these little areas right here. And then finally, well, not finally, but we have our shoulder plate. It's pretty easy. They're pretty easy to deal with. Sometimes we call them shoulder bells as well. And then finally, in my opinion, the most important piece, which is the chest diamond, the iron heart. I always save this as the very, very last piece of armor that I do on a set, just because it's just my tradition. But you can do whatever you want. But that's all of the torso plates. Now that doesn't include the back plates. I'm not really messing with the back plate for this. That's a pretty big piece, and I don't even like making them out of metal, much less trying to make one out of Sintra. So if you want to make a back plate, there's plenty of pictures and examples of how to do that on the Mercs website. I wear one all the time, even though I do wear a long coat and a cape or a cloak on occasion, just because I like having all the armor on. You can decide if you want a back plate. A back plate is not necessary if you have something covering your entire back so that nobody can tell you're not wearing a back plate, which means some sort of cape, even if it's a half cape, if it stops right at your belt line, it has to cover your complete back. A backpack that covers your complete back, or a cloak, or something of that nature. So let's go ahead and start working on tracing these out. You want to try to conserve as much material as possible. So I go and try to use these edges. Some people use the top edge. I like to use the side edge. So we just take a pencil. You can use a Sharpie as well. Sharpie makes a thicker line. I think if you're just starting out, sometimes it's better to use the Sharpie and get the thicker line. I just use a pencil because, we're going to be cutting this with a razor blade for the most part. We're doing our right side first. Make sure you hold the pattern down real good. You don't want any slippage, or there's a good chance you'll screw up your line, and then you'll have wonky looking armor. Nobody wants to look like the F Troop Mando. And just take your time. It's not a race. If it takes you 10 minutes to cut out one, or to trace out one plate, that's perfectly fine. The nice thing about using a pencil is that it leaves a little line that will make it easier, in my opinion, for your X-Acto or your razor blade to go through. And I try to stay just on the outside of the paper so you can see where it's worked in a little here. So you just want to make sure you just stay to the outside. Come right on down. Move this a little bit. And another thing I like using, another reason I like using the edge is that if your pattern does slip, well, it's pretty easy to align it back to the edge. So right now we're looking pretty good. Just keep following that edge. Right till you get to the end, just like that. There we go. We have our right plate. So we're going to go ahead and cut this out. Now, here's the thing. There is my razor blade. Guys and girls, I cannot emphasize this enough. You need to wear a glove on the holding hand, okay? Wear a glove. Wear a glove. You'll be sorry if you don't. I'm telling you. I know from experience. My hands are not the prettiest. Alright, and then you want to stay on this line and just gently, very gently pull it across, giving it some very gentle pressure. You can also use an X-Acto knife. Some people like X-Acto knives more. It's totally up to you. It's totally up to what you want to do. Once you have your first line or your primary pull is done, or your primary cut, I say pull because I'm pulling the knife. Once your primary cut is done, subsequent cuts are going to be pretty easy. They're going to want to stay in this line here. In fact, I think I'm already through. Let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty much through. See, when you're through, you can just pull it. You can pull one side a little bit and push the other one up, and it'll pop right open. So that's what you want. That means you're doing it right. Sometimes I like to hold this like a pencil. Gives me a little bit more control, a little more fine control. And you don't have to push very hard. Make sure you're using a sharp blade too. You don't want to try to use something that's super dull, because if it's really dull and you're trying to cut, you're going to end up having problems. Okay, you're going to end up pulling too hard sometime and either making some kind of weird scraggly cut out through here or cutting your friggin' fingers off or something. And you've been warned. I have warned you. Just follow that line. Again, once you made your first cut, subsequent cuts will stay in the line pretty easily. Just keep making cuts in the same place, applying a little bit of pressure each time. It may take 4 or 5 goes on there, but you'll do it. You'll get it, and it'll pop right out. Oh, getting blurry here. There we go. Also, make sure that when you're doing these cuts, don't do this on a table that you're trying to keep, okay? Work table. Don't even do it on something where you just put something underneath it. unless you have a large piece of wood. Use a piece of plywood, something like that, because if you want to get divorced, or if you're a kid and you're wanting your parents to discipline you appropriately, this is a surefire way to get divorced and or get disciplined. And if you're a kid doing this, if you're a child, I recommend having a parent with you. You need to have a grown-up with you that can help you with some of the usage of the tools. Again, you've been warned. Heed my warnings. They're warnings of experience. Now we're getting to where we've got some curvy areas. Curvy areas are always a little bit difficult. Just be real slow and go around real gently, and you'll get it. Okay? Now where it gets real kind of difficult is in the subsequent cuts. These knives, they don't like to turn, so you've got to make it happen and follow along that same cut that you just did. There. And we'll worry about popping the rest of that off when we get there. We're almost done. We're well over halfway. We're pretty much 2/3 done here. Another curvy area, not quite as bad as the last. Your knife may want to stray a little bit here. Just pull it in. Right there. And again. Okay. And this is our final long cut. Again, patience, patience, patience. Sometimes you may have to move the plastic around just a little bit. Make sure you move it before you try to cut. Do not move it while you're cutting. Move this around just a little bit. See, I'm moving it so I can try to get this curve nice and crisp. Alright, now we do here, see, break that off, just work this a little bit back and forth, it'll pop, you'll hear that little pop, and you know you've got it. Now if the edges here need some help, move this back where you guys can see it. If the edges here where the corners are at, these sharp corners, they need a little help, just put your knife in there, drag it a little, drag this one a little. Same right here, drag it up a little. And then of course like before, right there, you pop it right up. Now this method works just as good for the 6 mil Sintra, 6 millimeter Sintra as well, or 6 millimeter PVC. And one thing you want to be careful with, one thing that's happened here, that's alright, we'll see how it's kind of shaved off a little bit. You'll see it right here. Now this really won't matter because we'll sand this, we'll sand this down a bit on these edges. So this little divot here, this won't really matter by the time we're finished, but it just adds a little bit of extra time, and that's where cutting bringing it all the way out to the edge will keep that from happening. See? But that's okay. Do not fret if you see that. Don't grab everything and throw it away and say, oh darn, drat, whatever. Because that's not going to help anybody. It's definitely not going to get your armor made. So, all right. So here's our chest plate. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Refocus. There we go. All right, here's our chest plate. Now what we're going to do before we mess with heating it up and and doing all that, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of sanding on the outside. Okay, so to do that, you're going to need your sandpaper. Of course, it's hard to see, but I use 120 grit. Okay, this is kind of a used piece, but that's fine. You don't need anything excellent for this. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. I think I can. Yep. All right. So what I'm going to do here is we're just going to lightly sand these edges a bit. Let's put it up here. It might be easier for it to focus on. Yeah. We're just going to sand them and shape them up a little bit. You don't need to sand them a whole lot. You just need to kind of round those edges a bit, because this Sintra, this PVC Foamboard, Sintra, whatever you want to call it. I'm so used to calling it Sintra. That's pretty much what I call it. That's kind of what we've called it since the beginning of time. This PVC Foamboard here, it will cut you. These edges are very, very sharp. Okay? And I don't want anybody getting cut. So we sand it down a bit here. Like I said, don't worry about those little bits there. By the time you're done, see, they're already kind of starting to work their way out a little bit. Nobody's really going to see them. It's not the end of the world by any means. That's the cool thing about Mando armor. This becomes weathering. Little things like that, they become weathering. Make sure you get all these little edges rounded off too. You don't want to get poked by them. Now, some people like using the 6mm Sintra more than the 3. I mean, I don't use Sintra myself, so I can't really have no real experience on which one is better than the other. The 6mm, of course, it's much, much thicker. In fact, I probably have a piece I can show how thick it is. Actually, I do. I've got a piece right behind me. This type of Sintra, the 3mm Sintra, it's a little bit easier for beginners to work with. Just a wee bit easier. And these are beginner tutorials. I'd rather stick with the things that are easier for beginners. That's why we're not doing metal armor. Let me get a piece of 6mm here. Alright. This is 6mm Sintra. This is 3, so you can see the difference. The 6 is twice as thick. It's super duper thick, and it's got some weight to it. It's pretty tough stuff. It will take some good abuse. Okay, so if you want to use 6, you can. Of course, it's more expensive, but it is more durable. It's more likely to last longer. And the thing about Sintra is, for the most part, it's durable. I mean, you can flex it a good bit, and it's obviously it's not breaking when we're flexing it. So it's easy to form. It doesn't take a whole lot of heat to form this. So that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, we're going to form this, and to do this, we're going to use our gloves, of course. still got a little piece of chaff on there. Let's make sure that's all off. There we go. All right, now there's two ways you can form Sintra. Well, three ways technically. You can use a heat gun, okay, if you want. I'm not too partial on a heat gun because it only heats a small part of the Sintra at one time when you really need all of it heated up, okay? You can use water, which is what I like to use, boiling water, or you can use an oven, which works just like just like water. The difference between the oven, and the heat gun and the oven, the oven, the heat gun, and the boiling water is that the heat gun and the oven, okay, make the Sintra fume, okay, and inside of this stuff is a whole bunch of toxic chemicals that when they become airborne are not good for your lungs, like formaldehyde and things like that. I personally don't want to suck in a bunch of formaldehyde, so I use boiling water, okay? And I think my water pot is probably hot enough that I can set it up here now. I'm going to show you how to test your water here. Alright, now, there's our pot of water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to test it with a piece of Sintra here and just see how long it takes. That's how you know if your water's hot enough. I'm applying some slight pressure while it's in there. Okay, now. Yeah, now, if it holds that shape, you know your water's hot enough. You know, you want to keep your water, you know, on a stove or whatever. These are fabric gloves. I don't recommend using fabric gloves, but since I'm not going to be, like, you know, putting my hand under the water, it shouldn't be a problem. Your water needs to be pretty close to boiling now. See how nice that's curling? Now you just want to hold it there. Sometimes I'll blow on it. Now you know your water's warm enough because the Sintra's now held its shape, and now we'll just shake it here to cool it off. Yep, now it's cool. Now see it's holding that shape. Refocus, camera. But we've got our shape, and we're good to go. There we go. So, let me set this water back on the hot plate for just a moment. I keep a hot plate out at my shop. That's what I use for the water. Anytime I need to heat up water or I'm dyeing anything, stuff like that, I keep a hot plate out for that. So maybe that's a good idea for you to do too, is use a hot plate. That way you don't mess up your stove, you know. And always put your tools back up. Put them in a place that's out of the way of where you're working at currently. All right. Now, go ahead and here's our water again. Hopefully our camera here does not get covered with steam. All right, now we immerse our plate. And you want to keep it under there for a little while. Now, one thing you want to remember about Sintra armor is that it's not going to bend in 3 dimensions very easily, okay? So what you want to do is you want to bend it as best as possible to accommodate your chest, okay? To cover your chest appropriately and work with the contour of your chest. So here's our piece of Sintra. All right, what I'm going to do is just kind of, as I'm bending it, I'm also kind of, I'm curling it in 2 different directions. I'm bending it this way, but I'm also bending it this way. So I'm bending it along a horizontal plane and a vertical plane at the same time. In other words, I'm using my thumbs to kind of hold it down as I bring the edges inward. Alright, now you're going to have to do this a couple times. It's not going to be, it won't be a wham bam thank you ma'am kind of thing. It's going to take probably, 2 or 3, maybe even 4 good submersions to get the final shape that you want. But it is crucial. It is crucial. You put your thumbs right there in the middle. Shake that off. Put your pointer fingers here at the edges. Your pinkies here on these tab sides. You can see me moving them. And you just kind of, like I said, you bring it in both horizontal and vertical at the same time. Then just kind of move up. And see, if you look at it, see if we can look at this. See, we're kind of getting a little bit of a bend going on here and a bend going on this way as well. It's not easy. It's not that easy to do with Sintra like it is with metal when it comes to getting that nice complex curve. That's when sometimes it might even pay off to have like I could probably use one of my metal plates and hold this on the top, hold this on the outside and just push it down real hard. But, you guys can't just get a metal plate for yourselves to do that. So another thing you want to do too is you want to tweak this outside, or the what I call the dog leg. You kind of want to tweak it a little bit at an angle because it's got to be able to kind of come in. Otherwise, you're going to get a gap between it and the vest. Don't worry if your plate's getting a little bit dirty. Alright, we're going to go with, so we're going to submerge it this way. We're going to do this one final submerge, and then we should be good. Again, see how I'm twisting this? I'm kind of twisting it, but I'm twisting it up high, like right around in here. You've got to twist it up high, because you want to get that, you don't want a gap. A lot of people have a gap right around in here, especially right around in here, and you don't want that gap. Alright, we're going to do this edge out here. So I'm just going to submerge that edge in the water. You don't want to leave it in there super long. I mean, 2-3 minutes tops. If that. I mean, maybe like a couple minutes maximum. And then just take this and just kind of work it up a little bit. The camera will focus so you can see what I'm doing. I'm kind of working it. So I've kind of worked that edge up just a little bit. We'll do it again for you here real quick so you can see it again. I'm going to put that whole edge down there. Alright, now see how I'm working the edge? You don't want to work it too much. You want to work it just enough so that you don't get you don't get that gap in there. So remember, patience, patience, patience. It's all about having proper patience. As long as your water stays hot, which it will, you have a big pot of water this size hot, it's not going to get, it's not going to lose that temperature anytime soon. Trust me. And you can see how I'm kind of not just bending, but I'm kind of torquing it at the same time. I'm giving it a bend and a twist, both together, so that it achieves this kind of bend, twisted, kind of weird shape. I don't know. It's hard to explain exactly. See how that's got a kind of a nice contour going on? I'm actually going to go ahead and move the water. We're finished with the water. Alright, there's our contoured piece. Now I contoured this more towards my body. You would need to contour it towards your body. So one way you can do that and kind of measure it as you go is to, I always tell people to wear like a sweatshirt. Get yourself a nice thick sweatshirt and put that, in the places where the plate's going to go. Put this plate would go on your left chest, right over your left breast. Basically, it's a breastplate. So you would put it, in the appropriate area, and you'd measure it with that. And as long as these sides are pretty close to your the shape of your chest, you're going to be good to go, because your attachment method is going to pull these edges down here. Okay. Once these edges are pulled down, you'll get a nice cleaner shape. You'll get a nice cleaner piece of kit. And if you have to go back a little bit after you get your other piece done, if it looks like some of these corners need to be brought down a little bit, you can use your heat gun at that point and localize your heat, because you don't want to lose this general shape. This general shape, I'm going to move this real slow so the camera stays in focus. See how it's not flat. It's no longer flat. It's got some curves to it now. Flat armor only works in cartoons. It doesn't work in real life. Because none of us are flat-chested. Everybody's got contour to their chest. Okay? Now, once this piece is done, okay, we want to take our sandpaper, and this piece is pretty much finished as far as forming goes. We're going to take our sandpaper. We want to hit our edges again, okay? Just like we did before, but this is the final go. Just in case maybe you made a weak spot where it touched the bottom of the melting pot or whatever. You just want to get these corners really nice. And now, if you want to carve dents in your armor, you can totally do that. I don't recommend doing that with 3mm Sintra, because you don't have a whole lot of thickness here to work with. Okay. if you're using this 6mm Sintra, 6mm Sintra is the much better option for carving, blaster marks or claw, scrapes, whatever. Use the 6mm for that. 3mm, when you start cutting into it, you really start weakening the structure. And there we have our finished plate. You're going to want your chest plate to look similar. Like I said, depending on your body structure, that's what really is going to matter for these curves. But this plate is fully sculpted, and it's ready to do the next plate. And just take your time and be patient. I can't say that word enough, patience. And again, wear gloves so you don't cut your hands or fingers off. I don't need any fingerless Mandos out there. You can't pull the trigger without your trigger finger. So anyway, hope you guys have learned something, and we'll see you in the next episode.